This is Senator Dallas Hurd, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. So, how's everybody doing? I'm going to get where I'm not being blinded there. I guess I'll step back here since you got the camera going. Apologize for being a little bit late. I left my house at 4 and I thought I'd have plenty of time to get here and actually be a little bit early, and then I got about through Elkton and I looked at the clock and I'm like, my gosh, I better step on it. So I've been breaking Kate Brown's laws left and right, and I broke the speed limit quite a bit on the way here too. So Kate, if you're watching, sorry, not really. Can everybody hear me pretty well? Okay, so anyway, so my name's Dallas. I'm the state senator for Southwest Oregon. A lot of you probably live in the district there. Just outside of the city limits there at Coos Bay is where we start, and we go all the way to the California border, over to Roseburg, down to just north of Grants Pass, and kind of work our way back down to the border to the coast from there. So it's a beautiful district. It's a big district. A lot of driving, a lot of travel. I've been working myself to death here this last couple of years. Since I got into the Senate, it's just been unreal how much time it requires to just pour yourself into this stuff. I mean, all the committees that I'm on, the intensity that the left continues to just amp up is what really has kind of surprised me, to be honest, and I'm sure you're right there with me on that. I mean, it was bad the first 3.5 years while I was in the House of Representatives here in this state, but the last 2 sessions have just been incredibly fast-paced. We thought it was really bad with cap and trade, but now we're seeing this stuff with, as they call it, police reform, but it's really just the erosion of our society. It's just amazing how, we have a restaurant in Roseburg called Casey's. I mean, it's the smallest of the small, little mom and pop restaurant. Wonderful people, local folks. And they got a $14,000 fine from OSHA for simply opening their doors back up after a couple months. I mean, they were dying economically. And they opened those doors back up, I think it was about 6 days before the governor finally reopened things, conditionally so. But they did the social distancing stuff. They made it to where they were only 50% capacity. People were trying to wear masks and doing all that kind of stuff. And I actually got on the phone with Brown and talked to her about this specific situation twice. Once I knew it was starting to become a problem, because unfortunately the city government there helped with assisting OSHA get the information that this business was not complying. I don't want to say breaking the law, because I really don't recognize what is happening at this point as lawful. It's amazing how words become more and more perverted these days as our education system continues to brainwash our youth, and now has brainwashed 2-3 generations of Americans now that are living and breathing in this country, to where now, I mean, when I hear somebody is breaking the law, I'm like, okay, well, what did they do? Were they assaulting somebody, or were they doing something some tyrant governor like Kate Brown said they shouldn't do, which was, in this case, earning a living? Oh my gosh, going to work and earning a living. Oh my gosh, opening the doors to a restaurant that people chose to go to. You think about that. The left doesn't think we are capable, us peasants, as they look at us, we are not capable of making our own choices anymore. It doesn't matter if you're 70 years old, 50 years old, 20 years old, whatever. They clearly don't think we are real people anymore that can actually make our own decisions. They need us, pat us on the back of the head and guide us through life. I call it moral supremacy. The word supremacy keeps getting thrown out there. I've been called a white supremacist and a racist lately. Not because of any facts, not because of any truth, not because of any words or actions I use, but because of the way I look. We have people in this country trying to divide us. I've been telling my community a lot lately back in the I-5 corridor, because it's primarily Caucasian, and I've been trying to remind people in rural Oregon there, don't buy into this stuff. Our black and brown and yellow and red sisters and brothers, they're just like us. They're caught up in this mess just like we are. They're being lied about too. Different lies, but they're being lied about too. We all have problems. We all have people that hate us in life. I'm sick and tired of being mislabeled as something just because of the way I look. I don't hate anybody. Christ tells me to love all men and women. He doesn't say dependent on how they look, dependent on what haircut they have, dependent on how they talk. And then I'm being told by people all the time that go around screaming in our face about how wonderful they are and how embracing of everyone they are, that I need to be more tolerant. Well, I am tolerant. I put up with these jackwagons in Salem all the time. I'm extremely tolerant of their stupidity. I don't care what they look like as they're screaming in my face. I'm extremely tolerant. This whole crowd right here is very tolerant people. We put up with a lot of abuse from a lot of people who think they're really something. The arrogance of the radical left. And I'm having a hard time anymore seeing the difference between the left and the radical left. A couple of years ago, there was still quite a bit of a gap, I felt like. What people call a liberal now is not what you and I feel like, identified as being a liberal in the past. A liberal to me was someone who was, pretty socially liberal, meaning fairly libertarian in their social views, which frankly would be more so how I am, from at least the way I feel like government should be involved. The way I feel about whether somebody should do something a certain way or live a certain way or whatever, that's just my own personal beliefs. I don't take that into Salem as your senator and start forcing that down people's throats through the fist of our government. This government is supposed to represent all people, not just whoever's got the most money or the most votes or the biggest faith or whatever. It's supposed to represent all people. That's not what the radical left is promoting anymore. It is a message of oppression, submission, dominance. They're not about ideas. If they were, they wouldn't have to call me names all day long when I'm bringing forward good ideas about how we can get people back to work. Every time they call you something, some nasty name, they're revealing their weakness, their mental weakness, their character weakness. They're not going to take it upon themselves to actually do the hard work you and I do to just, hey, how are we going to make life better for ourselves and for everybody else without forcing anybody against their will? No, they're like, I don't like the way my neighbor thinks, or at least I don't think I do. And because some jerk on TV, an athlete, a movie star, a politician, some big business person from the corporate world, from Silicon Valley, whoever, tells me that my neighbor over here that looks like this, who thinks like this, or is a part of this church, or a part of this faith community, or a part of this group, they're racist, they're sexist, they're bigots of all shapes and sizes. That reveals something about people. They're screaming in a mirror, folks. Think about it. They're screaming in a mirror. And we need to quit apologizing for ourselves. I've done that. Not in the sense of publicly saying, oh, I'm ashamed of myself because of what I was born as. I'm never going to do that. Because it's irrelevant. But what I'm saying is I'm not going to run from them anymore. We're going to start calling them out, not with hate, not with ferocious anger, but with steadfast conviction that, hey, we're not going to let you get away with the lies anymore. You're not going to tell me that my children who were born 7 and 3 years ago are at fault for atrocities 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 years ago. Any more than anybody else whose kids look different than mine are any more responsible for something that happened 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago. My gosh. It just perplexes me how these folks continue to get away with this stuff. These elitists, these moral supremacists. What is a moral supremacist? If there's any supremacist that I want to highlight today and talk about and really bang on, it's the moral supremacist. Moral supremacist doesn't have anything to do with your code of right and wrong, or where you source that code of right or wrong. I get it from Scripture, but I'm not going to force that on you. That's where I get it from. And I'll be honest, I'm a terrible representation of a Christian at times. So don't judge my Lord based on this guy, please. I will fail you daily. A moral supremacist is someone who thinks they know better inherently than their neighbor. And because they are inherently better, because they know better and believe in things that are better than what they think their neighbor is, they are going to go force that person to comply and yield with whatever it is they think they know better. They think because they have got it figured out in their hard leftism and their purity of that they are morally justified to force you and your children against your will. What can be sicker than that? Really, when you ask yourself, what can be more sick than someone who thinks they are justified to force anyone? But yet that's what they're doing. There's a cult movement going across this nation right now. What I saw up in Portland, if you're not aware of it, my dad, who's here today, my chief of staff, who's not here, we went there they came with me one day to the Portland protests, and then I went with some other folks on a separate trip a few days later, and we walked amongst kind of a park like this. If you're not familiar with where that situation is, the federal courthouse and the Justice Center and all these government buildings and this big, huge courtyard go around this big park and everything. It's huge. I'd say it's probably 4 or 5 football fields in size, the actual landscaped area in between all these buildings. And although I did see hundreds, if not thousands, of peaceful, meaning not actually getting violent at that moment, protesters, the rhetoric that I heard should terrify anyone. The shaming against people because of their race should terrify anyone. It just kind of destroyed me watching this stuff and witnessing it. I saw people in this park in different subgroups and pockets and whatnot beating the living hell out of each other. And this was family on family crime. This was family on family hate. This wasn't like warring factions. This was like this subgroup over here, and they're having scuffles continuously, and then you'd have a subgroup over here, and they're having their scuffles continuously. You had Antifa over in one big group over there kind of funneling in. You had what I guess most people would say the BLM crowd was probably the biggest crowd over in front of the Justice Center. And like I said, I would focus on that crowd. They were not being violent. The folks that identified themselves, I guess, as purely as possible as the BLM crowd, they were not being violent, but they were not condemning any of the violence around them at all. The things that they were saying about race, as far as if you were a certain color, you should say sorry to this other person of a certain color for things that happened a century plus before anybody living and breathing that was walking around that protest, that is not helpful. That is not healing this nation. Somehow we're going to have to, as a community that feels threatened and attacked by that movement, we're going to have to resist the urge to become angry and hateful towards those slinging that stuff at us. I will admit to you, every day I have to kind of check myself. Every time I get on Fox News or whatever and I start reading about, the stuff that's going on in Wisconsin now, and the stuff that's been going on in Portland, and the stuff that's been going on in Minnesota, and on it goes. I have to check myself and remind myself, this is what they want. They want me to feel this way. They want me to start holding this against my neighbor because they're a different race. They want me to start holding it against my neighbor because they're from the city. They want me to hold this against my neighbor because they're from a different party. That's what they want, folks. The elitists in this nation, in this world, typically found in the uber rich crowd, like uber rich billionaire folks, and the highly, I wouldn't say just educated, but certainly on the university, faculty side of things, like at the Ivy League and whatnot. Now, I've said this to a lot of groups. Being rich does not make you evil. Being highly educated does not make you evil. Being a professor at Harvard or Yale does not make you evil. But there is definitely a type that is very consistent throughout the groups and the individuals that I see on a consistent basis, whether it's watching them from afar or rubbing elbows with them in your state capitol from time to time. There's a type of individual. It's not a certain race. They're not just from some certain town. They're not from just some university, but they are consistently that type of person that you can just feel it. They think they're better than you. They know they're better than you. They know they're better than the great unwashed. And they really seem to have a fascination with getting us to war with each other, because one way or the other, they're kind of, I don't know how to put it. I hope I don't get confusing here as I say this, because I think about this stuff a lot, if you can't tell. I'm always trying to unlock the puzzle, if you will, because I think it's important. The people you send to Salem, the people you send to D.C. should be the kind of people that are serving hardened enough to kind of destroy themselves on a daily basis to figure out how we fix these issues. Not just go up there and engage in some seesawing back and forth, left wins, right wins, left win, like just that stuff is old. I'm so over the whole well, Republicans are going to win this time, then the Democrats will win the next time, and then we'll win the next time, and it's just back and forth, constantly allowing ourselves to get pulled into this two sides, warring back and forth, completely forgetting about the fact that we are one nation, united. Supposedly, that's what we have to be, frankly. We're completely allowing ourselves to forget sometimes, and I'm raising my hand as one of the worst offenders at times. We're forgetting that we have to become united at some point, under freedom. That's non-negotiable. That is absolutely non-negotiable. It has to be under freedom. But these folks, they love it when we fight, because they're kind of like a very astute business person who understands commodities, understands currencies, understands markets. I am just a small business guy, but I've been extremely obsessive about my finances and my business and just all the stuff that I'm involved in economically. I'm just some high school educated guy from Douglas County. The economy there is not really any better than it ever is here. So if you actually want to make anything of yourself economically, you got to be kind of just crazy devoted to understanding this stuff, so you're always getting ahead of the tide change. That's what these folks are kind of like in the societal sense. They make power gains no matter who is winning and losing, as long as the fighting and the hatred keeps going. As long as we down here keep distracted with who's really, I guess it's the way I'd put it. We're always worried about left versus right, our neighbor versus us. We need to start focusing on who the fence is, if that makes sense. Because the fence is the real problem. They're not all Democrats, folks. They're all Republicans in there. He hasn't come out hardcore against Trump yet, but George W. Bush continues to make me sick with every passing day. Mitt Romney makes me sick every waking moment. John McCain, before he passed away, was going there. Who's somebody else? Who was that jerk from Arizona that's not in the yeah, Flake. What a perfect name. What a perfect name. Man, the Lord has a sense of humor. Thank goodness, former U.S. Senator Jeff Flake, right? Jeff. He's the worst of them. Well, no, the worst of them. Who's the guy from Ohio? Kasich. My gosh. Oh my gosh. John Kasich, right? Yeah. John Kasich. My gosh, people. Think about it. So, focus in on who those people are, right? They're the same type of people. It doesn't matter if it's former President Obama or George W. Bush. Remember that type I referenced earlier? Super wealthy, Ivy League, elitist, better than us. We got to start fighting back against this stuff. Don't fall into the trap. I know you're good people. I don't have a lot of concern about the people here. But it's your job and my job to go back out and tell our brothers and sisters out there, don't fall into the trap of starting to hate your neighbor because CNN said you should. Fight back against that. Let's start taking our culture back. I'm not going to say let's take our schools back. Let's take our children's education back. Okay? They are destroying purposely. One of the great things about this COVID situation and the radical left really just kind of taking the whole shirt off and saying, here I am, fully revealing what they're about, is that it's showing everybody what we in this crowd right here have known has been going on for a long time, but have been having a very difficult time getting it across to our neighbors who, for whatever reason, they're not here today. They'd rather go to the lake. They'd rather watch the game. They'd rather read a book. They'd rather do anything but deal with reality. But now that reality has come home to roost. And they may not still be here tonight, as Rod and I were talking about. Facebook might have something to do with that. Him and I were chatting on the way over here. I've had posts on my Facebook page that reach 40,000. I've even had some that actually reach 70,000 people. But as soon as I started talking about that, the protests and the riots and documenting that on Facebook, it's like the door got slammed shut all of a sudden. I didn't get anything from Facebook saying you violated any policies, because I haven't. But all of a sudden my reach exploded as I put the first 2 reports out, and then wham, all of a sudden it's like the lights went out. I went from 40,000 to 9,000 from one post to the next. That made no sense, folks. The first 2 were during the week. The third one was on a Saturday, I believe. No, it was a Friday night. That doesn't add up. It does when you think about who we're dealing with here. But in the real world, if that infringement upon my ability to speak and communicate with all of you and those tens of thousands of people was not being infringed upon, it wouldn't make any sense. The good news is, when you really think back historically, now I'm 35, I haven't been around forever, but I've talked with my dad some. He's been around forever. Even though the radical left in Silicon Valley and the rich billionaire crowd that owns this social media stuff is really fighting hard to shut down our speech, to shut down our right to communicate with each other, I don't care if it's a private company. My gosh. You want to engage in profiteering in the world of human communication, you should be held just as accountable as the federal or state government of this land when it comes to restricting people's speech. Now, we're decent human beings here. We don't want nudity and a bunch of crazy, horrible violence and stuff being allowed to be on what should be a family environment type platform of communication, just like Fox News or CNN or any of the corporate media doesn't put that stuff out. But when they start being what is the word for it? The arbiters? Is that the right word? What is it? Yep, the arbiters. Remember, high school educated. Of truth, we got a problem now. Remember, moral supremacists. And that's what they fancied themselves as. But the good news is we still have way more opportunity to communicate with each other than our forebears ever did. I mean, one of my favorite things to do a book report on, and I was a terrible student, by the way. In fact, Boomer, you were a teacher, correct? Yeah, you would not have liked me. Okay? You would have kicked me out of your class multiple times. I was a terrible student, but I loved doing a book report on the Pony Express. Even when Facebook slams down on the truth I'm trying to spread, it is way better than what the Pony Express was. It is way better than the richest of the rich in the Revolutionary War ever had to deal with, as far as like how to get that message out, right? So like let's not whine about it too much. We can whine and scream, sue away, do whatever you want to push back on these tyrants. But don't allow yourself to say, you know what, gosh, it's just not worth it. I just can't do it. I'm talking about what I do, just so you know. I just can't take anymore. The load's too heavy. The enemy's too violent. The enemy's too strong. They're too funded. They're too numerous. Like, none of that is true. That's the enemy whispering in your ear. Whether it's Hillary Clinton or Satan, that's the enemy whispering in your ear. I really do believe that there is a creator and that he is at work here. And if whether you're a believer or not, I really believe if you're fighting for what's right, he is going to bless us. We can take this culture back. We can take this nation back. We can take back the love and respect we once had for each other. Now, I'll be the first to admit to you, as I've gotten older and more experienced and educated in life, I have discovered that this nation has not always treated all citizens with respect and equality. And we should not be blind to that. That doesn't mean because the way you look, you should fall all over yourself apologizing for something you never did. But don't be blind to the problems that the country has had, because to be blind to that is no different than our brothers and sisters in the cities who are completely blind to what we go through in rural Oregon. We are treated like a peasant underclass. They've stolen our heritage. They've taken our economy away. They've taken our ability to be strong and independent, working class people. They have pushed us to be having the exact same issues as our brothers and sisters in the African American community have been struggling with for decades in the inner cities. The greatest, what was it called? The Great Society, is that what it was called with LBJ? Yeah, the Great Society, the anything but great society. The welfare system is it's a poison pill, it's a trap. In my opinion, it was purposed to cripple our African American brothers and sisters, to make them subservient to a political party. It has spread to all of us now. It's all the same game plan. It's all the same people doing the same thing. And we got to start opening our hearts up to how common our problems are across the spectrum of race, city versus rural, so we can at least have a chance and a hope and a prayer of reaching out to those brothers and sisters that currently think we don't like them or we hate them. You'd be saddened by some of the conversations I have with some of my legislative colleagues who don't look the same as me, but really love people. But when I have these conversations with them, I start to find that they think my people hate their people. It's not true. But that's what they think, because that's what they've been taught. That's what's been pushed on them their whole lives. One of my colleagues from East Portland, he's Hispanic. He's around the same age as me. He came into the building, the legislature, extremely liberal. And I mean, he's still a liberal guy. But he's really trying to help people. He's really trying to help the working class. And through a lot of really good experiences, tough experiences that him and I have pushed some really hardcore legislation trying to deregulate stuff, he came at it thinking he was involved for a different reason than I was, but they were actually the same reasons. And through that experience, it was revealed to him that the enemy I face and that I am focused on is the exact same one he is dealing with. But I think he found it to be more so on his side of the fence than mine, and that was a rude awakening for him. But thank the good Lord, he had the humility to put that pain and that propaganda and that brainwashing that he'd been given at the university he came from, and all the party politics and all that kind of stuff, thank goodness he had the courage and character to actually give this hillbilly from Roseburg a chance to prove myself as being a decent human being, not just some Caucasian guy, some Republican guy, some Southern Oregon hardcore conservative, whatever I'm labeled as guy. He actually gave me a chance, and that's I feel like it's created a beautiful friendship that I think will benefit a lot of people from Portland, from Roseburg, from Coos Bay, hopefully for generations to come. But it took him and I putting all of the bad blood aside that we've been told we were supposed to harbor against each other, giving each other a chance. It took that step to get to the other side and find out there's a lot of possibilities going forward. I've learned a lot from him, by the way. He isn't just learning from me. I didn't realize how much commonality my people and their pain in Douglas County and in Southern Oregon and here on the coast had with the Hispanic community in East Portland. I didn't realize that. I didn't know it. I had nothing against them. I just didn't know any better, just like him. So I'm just asking you, when you go to bed at night, pray for your enemies. Pray that they will not, the ones, there's, like I said, there's the ones that think they hate us, and then there's the ones that are trying to make us all hate each other. There's a couple different groups there. I really want to pray for the ones that think they hate us. I have a hard time praying for the ones that are trying to divide us. I do, but I'm not going to waste a lot of time and effort praying for that kind of a person. When you get to be 50, 60, 70 years old, 80 years old, and you're still trying to make people hate each other, I don't know. There comes a point of non-redemption, and the Lord forgives all sin. But there are some people that don't care about that. They just want to hate, and they just want to rule over the smoldering pile of bodies that is the rest of us. Let's not let them win anymore. So, to start wrapping things up here, you are in North Bend and in Coos Bay, Oregon. You are the tip of the spear. This is the focal point for Oregon politics. You are the pivot seat. You got Boomer here. You got Dick Anderson on the sign here. We have to win this November. And I'm glad it's the Coos Bay Republicans and this Central Committee that's actually the one here. I know that you guys are great people. You've proven to me you've got a great man in Rod. There's a lot of great men and women here. I always love the heart you guys have. Yeah, give yourselves a hand. Seriously. I know a lot of people that do this stuff. This is a uniquely servant-hearted group. This is a uniquely passionate, courageous group of people. You've got help coming this fall. We had 500 people show up to listen to this hillbilly on Sunday in Roseburg. Folks, that is not normal. 500 people showing up in little old Roseburg during all this is not normal. We've had 3 rallies with a total now of 750 people in little old Roseburg over 2 weeks. We're going to have another one tomorrow. I would expect 200-300 people show up to that one at the county courthouse. We'll have another one in a month. I'm going up to Portland on, I think it's September 20th, to talk to a congregation of Romanian folks at a Romanian church that has well over 1,000 people at their church services. That community does not let outsiders in at all. Do you? So you know what I'm talking about. They do not let elected officials in. Government is the enemy. Now, I'm going to let them know, them and I have a lot in common on that, because government is the enemy most of the time. But my point is that you've got people that have refused to be politically involved before that are now coming out of the woodwork organically, all on their own. We don't spend any money to promote this stuff. The thing that happened on Sunday this last weekend, no money spent that I'm aware of anyway. It's just Facebook, word of mouth. I don't even think anything was in the newspaper. The newspaper didn't even show up, if you can believe that. Can you believe that? 500 people show up in the little old town of Roseburg, in the middle of town, and the News Review, who is anything but a newspaper at times, didn't even report on it. My gosh. But you know what? That's fine. You know what that means? The Democrats don't know we're coming. It's going to be a horrible, horrible next day for them. Because I'm telling you, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of people come from Douglas County to help you this fall. I've got some stuff that my dad was good enough to go grab here that I'd like, if you want to participate in this networking. Like I told my dad on the way here, I said, the folks we're going to talk to don't need my help. They're already completely going gung-ho. They're going to be good to go. But if you want to be a part of our volunteer network, not just for this election, but going forward, feel free to sign up. I've also got some voter registration forms. I'm sure all of you are registered, but if you're not, great. But even if you are, just so you know, you should fill out those things tonight. I'll leave them with Rod, and we need to turn them in because they're kicking out people's votes left and right because the signatures don't match. My signature about every 2 years changes. I don't know if it's carpal tunnel, laziness, mental illness, whatever it is. I'm not even putting an S at the end. I told people this the other day. I'm not even putting an S at the end of my first name anymore. I don't know why. Probably laziness. But you need to update that voter registration every couple years to make sure our county clerks don't inadvertently kick out a good vote. You need to fill out that voter registration every couple years to make sure that your party registration's still good. You need to fill that thing out every couple of years to make sure your address is properly registered. If you don't get your vote, that means now you got to go to the clerk's office to get it. So obviously, this is the kind of group that's going to make sure their vote gets in, but I'd encourage you to start promoting this to the general community, because there's a lot of folks out there that if they don't get that ballot, they're probably not going to vote. They're just going to forget about it, and it's going to be the end. What are we going to be doing? What our program is, we're getting hundreds and hundreds of folks from Douglas County to register into this program, where we're getting group leaders set up. We've got an email system. We'll be feeding people plans and information on where we're going to meet, what we're going to be doing. I've been explaining to people that back in 2016, when Dick Anderson lost to Arnie Roblin by 349 votes, that I think it was just about over 2,600 registered Republicans in this Senate district didn't vote that year. Now, that's just registered Republicans. That's not conservative independents. That's not freedom-loving, non-affiliateds. We're just focused on registered Republicans. Now, Rod, correct me if I'm wrong. We do not have a Libertarian this time on the ticket, correct? We do not. That was...
Boomer's got the Libertarian vote.
Boomer does? Great. So Dick last time had a Libertarian. I'm going to focus mostly on Senate stuff right now because that's the chamber I'm in and that's what I've been focused on. Obviously, every vote that we collect, especially in the Coos Bay region and right here where we're sitting and whatnot, that's going to help get this man elected. We need that. We need to flip multiple seats over here. We can flip 2 House seats and a Senate seat. Every vote we collect is going to help Alex Skarlatos for Congress. It's going to help Kim Thatcher for Secretary of State. Let me tell you, folks, Shamia Fagan, my colleague from the Senate, both those women are colleagues of mine in the Senate. One is Democrat, one is Republican. If you don't know who Kim Thatcher is, do a little research on her. She's a wonderful human being. She is smart. She is talented. She is hardworking. She is courageous. She is steadfast. She is wise. She is worthy. Shamia Fagan is brilliant, hardworking, tenacious, and horrible. I mean that. I've tried to have a good relationship with the senator in the past. She has ripped into me in front of God and man twice now, hardcore, yelling at me. I did nothing to her except for just being myself. There's so much hate in that person. That is the person we are faced with the threat of being our next Secretary of State, folks. That needs to terrify you. Trust me. You don't know her like I do. Think Ocasio-Cortez from New York with a very, very smart brain. So not Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, good point. Yeah, just left that one. Yeah, but I mean, other than the intelligence gap, exact same kind of thing. And so anyway, I'd love to have you sign up on that stuff because it's not just about this fall. We're going to have a governor's election in 2022. I'm excited about that. We won't have Kate Brown as our governor, no matter what, after 2022. Next month, I'd love that too. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying no matter what, the sky will be bluer, the sun will be brighter, the grass will be greener, life will be better after November of 2022, no matter what. We need to be building an army of freedom, an army of peace and prosperity, not for some, not for one race, not for one party, not for the cities, not for our community, for all, because that's who we are as Americans. That's who we are as conservative Republicans. That's who we are as people here in Southern Oregon, and we are not going to let them define us anymore. Push back against this evil. Push back against this madness. Don't let them win anymore, especially in your hearts. Thank you for who you are. We are going to win this seat back. I can't wait to be over here on a frequent basis for the next couple months. I'm here to be your servant. Anybody who ever stands in front of you on a TV or in person or anything that conveys to you, I don't care if they're as red Republican or as conservative as you've ever seen, if they convey to you that they are not your servant, get rid of them. Get rid of them. They're not your authority. I am not your authority. I am your servant. You can call me your chief servant if you want. I am your servant. You're my boss. You're my authority. Kate Brown does not understand that at all. Because when I said, Governor, do not fine Casey's Restaurant, she said, Senator, they broke a governor's executive order. They went against my order. Oh my gosh, who the hell cares? Who made her God? That's what we're dealing with, folks, and it's consistent in that party, that type of person. Not in the voters necessarily, but who they send to D.C., who they send to Salem, it is consistent. Don't let them win. I know you won't. It's a pleasure to serve you. If you have any questions for me afterwards, I'll stick around as long as you want me to. Thank you for allowing me to serve you.
Thank you, Senator. Well, in Coos County, we had a lot of Republicans not vote, but we also had a lot of Democrats not vote. We had a lot of independents. We had a lot of folks, period, that didn't vote. We've turned about 4 points here in the last couple of years. And, okay, sorry. And how many folks a week are you re-registering from?
Oh, Lord, it could be, we're open 6 days a week, we're probably doing 20 a week, if not more, and that's dropped by half.
20 a week, and they're not just people that want to move here and be Republicans. They've been...
We've got a lot of those in the last couple of weeks. I've never voted before, registered.
Yep.
We've got a lot of those. We got a lot of Democrats walk in the door. I've had it. Can you fix it? Yep. Sure, right over here. Right? Yeah, it's amazing.
So we're going after all of them. Along those lines, those of you that have been taking the PCP training, we've got your packets over here. The gals worked hard to put those together this morning. They've got contacts within your precinct, and some of them are Republicans, some are independents, some are non-affiliated, and it's the folks that they've used science to find out who they are and how they are likely to vote, and we want them to be Republicans. We don't have a better time in history ever to turn the folks away from what the Democrat Party used to be. So take advantage. Those of you that haven't got your envelopes, go over there and look through and take those home with you. Check out the flags over here that they've got for sale. If you haven't got a Trump flag, you're one of the few, because I'm seeing them everywhere. I pull out of my house in the Myrtlewood campgrounds across the street, and every other trailer over there has a big old Trump flag going, so it's kind of cool. And we can get more. So, yeah, don't worry about us running out. We have other issues going on. Tonight I wanted to just rally the troops, give you guys a chance to, after 6 months, get together in person. I know it's a little chilly out here. I'm going to call this meeting, and we're going to do some of our other business through our MailChimp, and I've got a couple of folks that I owe apologies to that wanted to do some talking here tonight, but we'll get them next month. And do you guys like this better than sitting in front of the computer talking to each other? All right. So take advantage of Senator Hurd, our next House Representative Boomer over here. Ask him questions. Ask what you can do to help. Go down and buy some stuff at headquarters, because it's been really cool being able to put some money in their coffers. So I want to thank you all tonight. Is there anything pressing, and I mean really pressing, that anybody needs to get out? Yes, Joe.
You haven't signed the petition, it's right here.
If you haven't signed the petition, she's got it over there, the recall petition for Kate Brown. There's a lot of conjecture out there about how much good this is going to do, and this and that and the other, but let me tell you the information that we're gleaning from these signatures, our ability to know who's feeling what way through who is signing the thing, and most of all, I just want to see the look on her face when they tell her, you've been recalled. So I'm calling this meeting. Stay around as long as you want, and thank you for coming again.